In a medium like video games, there were very few games I'd consider to be truly cinematic in the 90s. Yes, the Sega CD tried with full motion video, PlayStation had games like Metal Gear Solid, and Nintendo had Ocarina of Time. But those were rare cases. When you think of the earliest examples of a game that one could consider breathtaking, one game that comes to mind is Panzer Dragoon for the Sega Saturn. To say this game is gorgeous would be an understatement. Even by today's standards, it's nice to look at, especially on a CRT. It's an experience. Jumping right in, the opening video sequence is close to 10 minutes long. It does something most things in entertainment get wrong. It doesn't over-explain the plot. I'm glad there's no narration and very little dialogue. You see your character trying to escape, being a bystander caught in a conflict and nearly dying in the process. However, a man on one of the dragons in this conflict manages to get shot and fatally wounded. Before he dies, he bestows to you some sort of supernatural force that almost seems like he's gifting you the dragon's bond. Again, there is no explanation. The game doesn't talk down to its audience or feel the need to explain the story away. It simply leaves room to breathe. I think that's incredibly rare, and it's one of the qualities that makes this game so special.
Mesquis.
Panzer Dragoon is an on-rails shooter with a targeting system that can eliminate swarms of enemies with a powerful shot. You simply hold the fire button down, move your cursor around to put a target on each of your foes, then release to rain fire down on them. It's something you will need to get used to in order to progress further in the game. It's not the main mechanic, however, as there are times you will need to spam the fire button to get off as many shots as you can, especially when shooting away enemy armor. The visuals are not the only thing that feels grand in scope. The music matches the beauty of the world to an almost matrimonial degree. Everything comes together to make a living, breathing work of art. But there are things about Panzer Dragoon that have shown its age. Sometimes the game will lead you right into enemies that makes it seem like you cannot maneuver out of the way in time, especially bosses or bigger enemies like the sandworms in level 2, and it can cause damage if you don't get to the farthest side of the screen. The worst aspect from a modern standpoint that I don't even fault the game for is the movement of the camera. It's always fixed at a location behind your dragon until you change your view by using the left or right shoulder buttons to look behind or beside you. It can be difficult to keep your eye on certain enemies that move all around your character. Turning to greet them can be a slow process. Sometimes by the time you get to their position, they're already somewhere else. One moment, bad guys will shoot you from behind. You may hit one of the shoulder buttons twice, but it doesn't quite register, so you end up looking from your side instead of from behind. This can make getting a shot on enemies more difficult. However, I've found if you're paying attention to the map in the upper right hand corner, you can predict where they're going to be next, so that helps change the camera's orientation in a timely manner. The controls work, but they take time to get used to. Once you're acclimated to the controls, everything makes sense. I imagine the game would probably be easier to control with the Saturn analog controller. But since I only have the standard controller with a D-pad, I can't make a comment on that. There's so much in Panzer Dragoon's favor. Plenty of action and explosions, the levels are memorable, the story's not anything crazy, leaving things up to your interpretation, and once you get used to the controls and how to target enemies, the game is much more rewarding. Perhaps the only complaint you can say about Panzer Dragoon is it's fairly short, with only 6 levels, but its arcade gameplay begs to be played again and again. There are a few sequels, all of which are worth your time. There was even a remake of the game that came out in 2020. It was pretty good, though the game kept freezing before the final stage, so I never got to beat it. Other than that, the remake looks and plays like a natural evolution of what those games would feel like today, with a wonderful use of bright and vivid colors. If you want to play a Panzer Dragoon game, the remake is a good way to experience it, especially if the originals feel a little more dated and difficult to play. Even with the barrier of entry, Panzer Dragoon is a game I think everyone should play at least once in their life.